Sounds like everybody is wide awake after an evening of revelry.
Not as good as my own.
Good times, corn toss and marshmallow roasting and other fun activities. Thank you so much for being here. We had a busy day yesterday, a lovely evening last evening, and we've got another busy day ahead. Meredith, could I ask you please to call the roll?
Joanne Adams.
Here.
Holly Bloodworth.
Here.
Jamie Bowling.
Here.
Patrice McCrary.
Here.
Julie Pyle.
Here.
Randy Poe.
Here.
Sharon Robinson.
Here.
Lee Todd.
Here.
Steve Trimble.
Here.
Diane Woods.
Present.
Lou Young.
Here.
Alyssa Riley.
Here.
RJ Osborne.
Here.
Hey, Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get into the agenda, I have a few announcements. One, checkout time is 11, and I would just ask you to absent yourself as you need to get that done so you don't have to take a recess. We have kind of polled the date for our special call meeting. We are looking at August 21 from 9 to 11 Eastern Time. Of course, all the appropriate formal announcements for that meeting will be made.
And Chair Robinson, that meeting will be virtual.
And that meeting, yes, it will be a virtual meeting. Yesterday, as we greeted our new board members, we did not take the minute to note one vacancy on the board due to the death of dear Alvis. Alvis was a member. He was inducted into the KAHAA Hall of Fame and was the Coach of the Year 8 times. Beloved coach and administrator in the state of Kentucky, and served this board so faithfully and with such diligence, even through some really challenging illnesses. So Alvis Johnson will be really missed.
Agreed.
And the thing that I remember about Alvis, no matter what, he was calm, he was rational, and on top of that, he had a sense of humor that could put things in perspective just when you need it. So I'm sure all those talents reside among us, but they will certainly be missed, as we will miss Alvis, and join his 2 sons and his wife Rosetta in mourning his loss, but celebrating the great contribution he made to education and to the students of the state. And now I'd like to, just to round things out, we've been made a gift of 2 important resources by Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker, and just ask him to please put it in context so that we know exactly the treasure that he has given us.
I promise you I'll be very brief. I know get out and enjoy.
I know you can go on and on,
Yes.
but
I promise you I won't. But big thanks to Commissioner Glass and the entire KDE leadership team for really embracing the board's resolution around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And we came across this gym about 3 or 4 months ago. We were well into Mandy Perez's tenure as Kentucky's Teacher of the Year. And we gifted Mandy this book along with Dr. Sweeney, a copy of Conscious Classrooms Using Diverse Text for Inclusion, Equity, and Justice, and I'll add belonging as well. And it really had an indelible impression upon her, as well as other folks who had an opportunity to read the book. It's one of the best resources I've seen, not just with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This is a short conversation I actually had with David Couch and Dr. Parks not too long, early this morning. It provides teachers, practitioners, educators, a step-by-step guide. You have the classroom guide right here in terms of fostering greater student voice. As we know, Commissioner Glass and KBE it is huge and greatly values students' voice. And we also talk about providing mirrors, windows, and sliding doors where students can see themselves and their experiences can be represented through the text. And through the other part of my life and the work that Mickey leads and her entire team with literacy. We want to make sure that part of having a great literacy, K-12 literacy framework here in Kentucky, that we have a robust literacy program that fosters equity, where students can see themselves and understand others in the text. So, great piece. And lastly, Mandy really highlighted the work at KDE and the communications team when she was at the White House being honored as Kentucky's National Teacher of the Year. And in fact, she shared the book with First Lady Jill Biden.
Ah, thank you. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, and thanks for giving me some context. I was going to send an email out, but I said, oh, forgot the internet's not working.
We're right here.
here we are.
Thank you. Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
reading.
Another part of our agenda is sharing the good news, the sources of inspiration, so that we can celebrate these victories, because there's always something to admire and share. So I'd like to call on Ms. Riley, Alyssa Riley, to share our first item of good news.
Thank you. So on July 5th, the Kentucky Department of Education announced the selection of 22 outstanding educators as recipients of the 2024 Kentucky Teacher Achievement Awards. These teachers are now in the running for the 2024 Kentucky Teacher of the Year Award, which will be announced in September. Education Commissioner Jason Glass said Kentucky's teachers are among the best in the nation, and I do agree with that statement. This year, KDE received 1,367 teacher nominations representing all 171 school districts. The judging was conducted by a blue ribbon panel of veteran educators from across the state. This year's elementary teachers of the year are Amber Dwyer of Alvaton Elementary, Warren County; Katie Hale, Ponderosa Elementary, Boyd County; Deanna Landrum, Southgate Public School, Southgate Independent; Justin Moreshi, Klondike Lane Elementary, Jefferson County; Brittany Ritter, Lincoln Elementary, Performing Arts, Jefferson County; Donnie Wilkerson, Jamestown Elementary, Russell County; and Sally Paulette Zaring, Painted Stone Elementary in Shelby County. This year's middle school teachers of the year are Kevin Daly, Valley Shannon Middle, Boone County; Doug Henry, Bullitt Lick Middle in Bullitt County; Abby Lee, LaRue County Middle; Megan Tepp, Valley Shannon Middle, Boone County; Rebecca Clark Thayer, Beaumont Middle, Fayette County; Kimberly Thompson, East Side Middle, Bullitt County; and Brandy Violette, Olmsted Elementary in Logan County. And lastly, this year's high school teachers of the year are Sarah Beth Boggs, Frankfort High, Frankfort Independent; Ryan Davis, Wagoneer High of Jefferson County; Luke Glazer, Hazard High, Hazard Independent; Sarah Payton, Rowan County Senior High; Kumar Rashad, Breckenridge Metropolitan High in Jefferson County; Aretha Whaley, Casey County High; Kimberly McClellan White of Muhlenberg County High; and Samuel Whitehead, Rowan County Senior High. So congratulations to them.
I mean, just the process of applying takes a lot of diligence, and to put it out there and stand and be recognized as among the best in the state is really quite a tribute. Thank you so much, Alyssa. So, Kentucky Meets State continues.
Kentucky Meets Street continues.
The U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services issued its 2021 determination letters on state implementation of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Kentucky was found to meet the requirements and purposes of Part B of the IDEA. This is Kentucky's 14th consecutive year of achieving the highest level of determination possible. The IDEA requires that states make determinations annually on the special education performance of districts within the state in relation to established targets found in the State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. This annual report includes indicators that measure child and family results and other indicators that measure compliance with the requirements of the IDEA. Listen to this, Kentucky is one of only 23 states and territories out of 60 to achieve the highest level of determination, and only one of 2 states to sustain this level for so long. This is outstanding news for KDE and Kentucky school districts. Congratulations.
Today we want to recognize Kentucky Leads Academy Scholars Program. LEADS stands for Leading, Educating, Advocating for Directors of Special Education. The Kentucky Leads Academy is made possible by a federal grant designed to increase the number and capacity of certified directors of special education teachers, admissions and release committee chairs, and early intervention service leaders in the Commonwealth. The scholars are competitively chosen to participate in the academy, and we have 3 cohorts now. There will be a 4th one added this fall. The cohorts 2 and 3 recently participated in the Kentucky Leads Academy Summit, engaging in a variety of topics related to effective special education leadership, including diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, trauma and resiliency, and special education law and post-secondary transition. The scholars are encouraged to apply what they learned at the summit in transformative ways to meet the needs of students with disabilities throughout the entire state of Kentucky. Congratulations today go to 15 scholars in Cohort 2 for completing the Kentucky Leads Academy. These scholars were recognized on June the 10th at the Kentucky Leads Academy Summit in Louisville. And so congratulations today on behalf of the board to Cohort 2 scholars, and thank all the scholars for taking the time to participate in this very worthwhile activity.
Thank you. Should add congratulations as well to the work of our KBE staff. Associate Commissioner Hilton is here today, so congratulations to you guys. Next item of good news, we'll call on Mrs. Joanne Adams.
And the hits just keep on happening.
All right.
Congratulations to KDE's Office of Special Education and Early Learning for receiving the State Personnel Development Grant worth over $5.6 million for 5 years. With this grant, OSEEL will implement Kentucky Empowers Program, short for Kentucky Educators, maximizing post-secondary outcomes for workforce and education results for students. Kentucky Empowers will increase the quality of transition programming through Kentucky school districts in the areas of career development, collaborative systems, policy, and in the development of individual education programs, or IEPs as we all know them, by implementing a 3-tiered model of professional learning. Program co-directors will oversee the development and implementation of Level 1 universal supports and Level 2 training activities. Coaching support for participants in Levels 2 and 3 will be provided by training specialists. Evaluation activities include the collection of formative and summative data, quantitative and qualitative, to assess the impact of professional learning on the ability of participants to build capacity and gain implementation fidelity in the 5 Kentucky Empowers focus areas.
Thank you. one more. Dr. Yen.
Yes, I am so excited to get to do a good news item. There is a national association, the National Association of School Public Relations. And the NISPRA group meets every year and offers a variety of prestigious awards. And the Kentucky team raked it in this year, lots and lots of hardware. So I'm excited to share that the Division I 12 different NISPRA awards in the 22-23 categories this year. I have a great list of those. I won't read all 12, but I wanted to highlight some of those. The DEIB newsletter for Nicole Fields and Jennifer Jin. The United We Learn campaign, several related to United We Learn. Mandy Perez was just a little media darling, so the work that I Choose to Stay essay from Mandy was there, as well as Jonathan Jetts in the audience, one of the Caleb's article on Perry County Schools community after the flooding of last July. So Student Advisory Council was one of the award winners, along with, you may remember, the newsletter article about the archaeological dig at the School for the Blind. So Tony, these are some of my favorite pieces that rose to the top for a very good reason, and several different members of the team were recognized, and some of them are here today. So if you would join me congratulating Tony Cons-Tapman and the communications team from the department on big wins. Communications folks to stand up and awkwardly while we clap. There you go. Come on, come on. Joe. Way to go, team. Big wins.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. We have lots to celebrate. And now we come to another important time on the agenda for board members to share. This is, per policy, this agenda item allows board members to raise issues not included on the agenda for the purpose of clarification, referral to a committee, or scheduling for future board review and/or action, if that is the consensus of the board. This is also a time for us to understand and for you to share how you are spending your time when you're not doing KBE work, and bring us up to date. So the floor is now open to be recognized for board sharing.
I'll jump off.
Oh, please, Mrs. McQuarrie.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. This past week, one of our schools is in some disarray because they are redoing the HVAC system completely. And it's been a long process, and teachers are getting ready for open house, and it's a disaster right now. The church I'm a member of, we have adopted the school to help them get ready for the school year. So I had the good fortune, not only as a church member, but as a board member, to go into that school. I cleaned bathrooms, I swept floors, I cut items out, and I talked with each and every teacher that I could see that was there working and let them know how much we appreciate them. It was a wonderful experience, even the cleaning bathrooms. It was a wonderful experience because every single thing that I did in that school reminded me of why I'm doing what I'm doing now. The why was there. It's for the kids, and it's to support our teachers. So that was a wonderful experience. I'm also set to do my weekly volunteering in a kindergarten classroom, my former teammates' classroom, which is a highlight of my week. I always leave the building smiling. So I'm keeping my foot in that door, because if I'm going to sit in this seat, I need to know the walk that they're walking.
Thank you so much, Mrs. McQuarrie. That's much appreciated. Other board members sharing? Oh, yes, Dr. Todd.
Arlington, my wife and I started first grade in Arlington, Kentucky, in a school. It was closed later and became an elementary school, and then this year the elementary school was closed. And they're a group of alumni who put together a celebration just to make it an upbeat thing, to recognize the accomplishments of those who had passed through those portals. They had a 3-day event starting on Friday night and going through Sunday, and had a banquet on Saturday night, raised enough money to give $3,000 to the human resources groups at the 2 schools where the children were going to be divided to go to. And Amy Smith, who is the superintendent of Hopkins County, it had been a difficult time for her because she lives in Arlington. She went to that school, and to close it was not an easy thing to do. But she came that night, spoke, and gave a diploma to a young man who left Arlington to go in the military before he finished his degree, got his GED while he was in the service. He ended up running a PX in Germany, speaking a couple of extra languages. And I guess there's a special resolution where you can actually give a diploma to those folks. And so she had a diploma that night for Bill Sharp. And it was a very, very positive experience. And I just wanted to applaud the effort on that committee that worked hard to put it together and to spin something like that into an excellent weekend. So Patsy and I really enjoyed it. I got a chance to speak, which was kind of challenging to do, but it's just an example of how you can take leadership and make something good out of something that could have been difficult. So.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate it.
I might follow up that Jason and I had a chance to go to Arlington after the tornadoes
Right.
last year, Hopkins County.
Hopkins County, yeah.
Yeah, and so now I have a commemorative T-shirt now that the building is is the new school going to be called Arlington? They're not replacing it.
They're going to 2 different schools.
Oh, okay, they split the student population, so, but while we were there, a lot of people said that they knew Dr. Todd. Even little guys.
Yeah. They call me Troll back there.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah, right.
Mrs. Bloodworth?
Yes, I've had a couple of districts reach out to me lately about just various things, and I just want to compliment the KDE staff, because every time I have a question or concern or someone comes to me and I reach out to usually through Meredith, but then through to you, you're just always so helpful and gracious, and how much I really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to recognize the support we get as we try to represent and really get to know what's on the minds of the parents and students in the community. Other board sharing? Yes, Mrs. Powell.
So I've had the pleasure of attending the New Member Institute with NASBE, and we are 2 sessions in and 1 more to go. And the last session, we had a section on parliamentary procedures, and my head was spinning by the end on that one. But the other thing I wanted to mention, in conjunction with Randy's work with the Northern Kentucky Education Council, this year I'm serving as president of our local Rotary Club. And so our initiative this year is to join with the Education Council doing the one-to-one reading mentor programs. So our members, and we're encouraging other members of the community to become trained reading mentors, and we're going to be working with Stevens Elementary with the children there to be able to help bring that reading up on 3rd grade reading level, because we all know how important that is. So looking forward to that and getting back to what our whys are.
It's amazing the numerous ways we find to serve, and I sense such delight from our experiences with our community, with our schools, with our kids. Other members? Before we proceed. Well, thank you so much. The good news and the board sharing is a sure source of inspiration. So we now acknowledge that Dr. Thompson is unable to attend in person, and his report will be provided later in a written format. And we come now to the Commissioner's report. Dr. Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Kentucky School for the Blind held 4 weeks of summer school, hosting 42 elementary, middle school, and high school students from KSB and students from districts across the Commonwealth. Students participated in field trips on the Belle of Louisville, a steam train in Bardstown, the splash pad on the waterfront, and the Science Center. Louisville Folk School brought a variety of instruments and performed for students on 2 different occasions. I'm going to try to get in on some of that. 18 students attended KSB's summer work program. The students worked at the American Printing House for the Blind, Kentucky Kingdom, and the Louisville Zoo. Oh, wait a minute, the kids at KSB went to the water park, and the kids at the other kids went to work. So performed I think they're both at the KSB, and they're one is a fun program and one is a work program. So choose wisely. Students performed a variety of jobs, including Braille proofreading, groundskeeping, food service, and guest services. KSB has a partnership with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, who provides job coaches and students that need extra assistance. The school year at the Kentucky School for the Deaf has ended with a celebration of the accomplishments of the 2023 graduating seniors. All 3 students received acceptance letters and plan to attend Eastern Kentucky University in the fall semester. The 40th annual Deaf Youth Sports Festival was held at KSD in July. In 1983, 7 volunteers and 7 participants began the Mini Deaf Olympics, which was later renamed the Deaf Youth Sports Festival, but it is still commonly called MDO. MDO is a week-long event in which deaf and hard of hearing children come together from all over the United States to participate in Olympic-style sporting competitions. Turning to the area technology centers, their principals and teachers attended the Kentucky Association of Career and Technical Education summer program in July and took part in professional leadership development and technical upgrade training. Sessions included ATC principal update, CTE opening with Dr. Todd Whitaker, CTE program and coordinator updates, and several CTE best practices update sessions. Students from several ATCs attended various career and technical student organizations and national conferences this summer, including DECA, Skills USA, HOSA, and TSA. They competed in technical events, networked with students and professionals from around the nation, and had a great time. And I would like, Associate Commissioner Greta Hilton is here. Greta, if you have a couple of new staff members that are supporting our state schools, if you could come up and introduce them, and we could just recognize them. I have to come to the microphone for all our viewing audience at home. Yeah, yeah, why don't y'all come up too?
He waited until you took a bite.
It was obvious. I was trying to, not call attention to that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank
you. Jonathan Jett, that most of you know from his time as superintendent in Perry County, has graciously returned from retirement to help us with some oversight and governance of KSB and KSD. He has also stepped in during the time we had a vacancy in the director position, and even though he said he was not interested in being the boss of anything whatsoever when he came back, he was able and willing to step in and help us fill that void as acting director along with Caroline Morrison for a little while. So I just want to say thank you for being able to do that and stepping up. And
you're very welcome, and I'm so happy to have Shannon on board.
And yes, and I'm very happy to have Shannon on board as well. Shannon Sparkman comes to us as, this is actually day 3.
Day 3.
Yes, day 3. It's a fun week, and as the director of the state schools. And so she's not new to the department. She came on about a year ago to work with some of the post-secondary transition work that we were doing for students with disabilities, and has continued that work and is now stepping into the role as director. And again, thank you to Shannon and welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with John and moving things forward. I'm excited.
Thank you. Well, we welcome you, and I want to make a special thank you to John for all the work that you did this summer, and to Greta too. We, as several of you know, we had a lot of staff turnover, leadership turnover at KSD this summer, and so both of them spent a lot of time on campus and really stepped up to help get them ready for the upcoming school year. So thank you both.
Welcome, glad to help.
Thank you.
And finally, Madam Chair, I just, on reflection of yesterday and my tenure here at the department, I just wanted to note that when you hired me 3 years ago, this board gave me 3 main goals, and I just wanted to review those with you. One was to bring your resolution on racial equity to life. And I think that if you look at the work that Dr. Woods Tucker and the DEIB team have accomplished over the past 3 years, we have a resounding success with that effort. The second goal that you gave me was to establish a future vision, a compelling future vision for the future of the state of Kentucky. And we did that through listening to Kentuckians, and that is the United We Learn initiative that all of you are engaged in and I hope continues. And the final one that you heard a lot about yesterday also was supporting this board in developing a portrait of a learner. And so you've seen the progress around that. So again, those 3 goals, bringing the racial equity resolution to life, establishing a compelling future vision for the state of education, supporting the board in developing a portrait of a learner effort, more so than when George W. Bush stood on that carrier, I can say, mission accomplished.
Well, speaks with integrity. That is, that's a really brief but resounding review of 3 years of amazingly productive effort on the part of the department under your leadership. And that is all I better say about that right now. I'm sure we'll have other occasions to celebrate your tenure, but we certainly take every opportunity to celebrate the success and the work of KBE under your leadership. So thank you very much. Our next item concerns the calendar for our upcoming meetings. So I would ask you to turn to that item. And the proposed calendar meeting dates for 2026, it was distributed in advance. Is there a motion for approval of the proposed calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed calendar. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We have an outside employment request. I would call on KDE General Counsel Todd Allen, please, to present this item.
Dr. Robinson, good morning. Board members, as many of you know, the board's policies require that when a board member engages in outside employment, they seek the approval of the full board in order to do so to ensure that there are not any conflicts of interest with their board service and their proposed outside employment. In your meeting packet, you have 2 applications, both from board member Diana Woods to engage in outside employment with the Kentucky Center for School Safety and Georgetown College, respectively. We are recommending approval of both of those, as we do not believe they create any prohibited conflicts under the Kentucky rules for ethics for the executive branch. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. I would ask first for a motion to approve these requests, and a second, then I'll call for any discussion.
So moved.
I'll
Is there a second? Thank you, Jamie. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or any comments? Any, Todd, further?
Have board member Woods recuse herself from the voting on this matter. For the note, we'll note that for the minutes. Yeah, thank you.
I think the material provides a lot of context and information. I sense that you're ready for the question. I will call it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Thank you. And the record will show that Board Member Woods recused, did not participate in this vote. Thank you. Our next item concerns the appointment of a KBE member to serve on the State Evaluation Appeals Panel, working very closely with General Counsel Todd Allen and considering appeals to evaluations of personnel. So nominations are now in order for the State Evaluation Appeals Panel for the 2023-24 fiscal year. We would like 3 members to serve on the panel, and the floor is open. Let's see, Dr. Todd and Mrs. Bloodworth and I have served on this panel. You're well supported by the staff, and these are important opportunities to participate in due process and support due process for consideration of personnel matters.
We make a motion to continue with those 3?
I was not expecting that.
A second
Oh,
right
we got a
there.
motion and a second.
Oh, yeah. Any discussion? No?
I didn't
Ready
host
for the
the chair
question over
here.
there, Chair?
When did you lose control?
You didn't say there were snacks.
Well, sometimes there are snacks. You guys. Dr. Todd, Mrs. Bloodworth, are you willing to continue?
I am willing to serve again.
I will do the same.
All righty.
Thank you for the nomination.
Let's find a way to do the same for him. I think I have to put the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition, please? No opposition. Thank you, guys. It is a service, and it is important. So we have our appeals panel. Now, some more good news, right? We have the opportunity to recognize the recipient of the Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnership. I'm going to call on Mrs. McQuarrie, please, to present the work of the awards committee and tell us about this recognition.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. Let me tell you a little bit about this award, the Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnership. Joseph W. Kelly served as a member of the Kentucky Board of Education from 1989 until 1998 and provided exceptional leadership as its chair for 7 years. He was a strong leader in the fundamental early years of implementing Kentucky's nationally recognized school improvement efforts. He was a respected business leader and education advocate. Kelly knew firsthand the critical role the business community plays in supporting Kentucky's public education system. His career exemplifies the significant contributions that members of the business community are making in support of Kentucky students. This award is given in the fall of each year to a Kentucky business person or a business who has partnered with a public school or district to provide outstanding leadership that promotes school improvement and student success. The criteria for the award include creating or sustaining strategic partnership between a business and school or district that leads to improved student outcomes, including but not limited to post-secondary success and workforce outcomes, and significant contribution to a school or district that leads or will likely lead to increased or improved educational opportunities or improved educational post-secondary or workforce outcomes for students. The committee did meet, and it's a wonderfully fun committee. I appreciate those involved. So I say it's the best committee around because it's such a positive experience. And on behalf of the awards committee, I would like to share that the committee met on Tuesday, July 25th, and determined that candidates 7 and 4 best met the criteria of the award. So yes, there are two award winners. Therefore, I would like to move approval of candidates 7 and 4 as the recipients of the 2023 Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnership, and ask the chair for the board's approval to recognize candidates 7 and 4 at the board's upcoming October regular meeting. And I must say, the applications were phenomenal. And the best problem we have on this committee is having a difficult time determining who should be recognized, because so many should be recognized. And for any and all who did not win this award this go, I do encourage them to reapply because there were some outstanding applicants. So yes, I am requesting 7 and 4 be recognized as our winners in October.
Thank you so much. Coming from the committee, this motion does not require a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no one wish to speak, I'll put the question. All those in favor of approving the committee's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Thank you so much, committee. Patrice, you guys do a wonderful job. It sounds like you've got a really nice job, as you say. It's so much to be affirmed and fulfilled. And
Celebration after celebration after celebration.
Yeah, wonderful. We will now have a discussion regarding KBE's call to action. The updated document is in the portal, and I believe you have a hard copy in your folder. I just want to remind you that, we are at this moment and considering this item because the board wants to be intentional and really explicit about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what it is we hope to achieve through our efforts. So I appreciate so much the opportunity to reference the resource that we were provided from the Brookings Foundation, reminding us that, I said yesterday, I believe we are stewards of the system, and the system has to be examined and investigated from time to time to understand that and to be confident that it's ready to meet the needs of those that we serve, learners throughout the state. But a system transformation process is really a lot of work, and you could wander around in the wilderness, in the morass of it, unless you have purpose, unless you're focused on support of pedagogy, and that you really, really understand the end game that you're trying to achieve. So we want to have a action plan that is really disciplined in that regard. So the floor is now open for discussion of our action plan, and I will ask, if you are ready, I would ask for us to consider a motion to approve the call to action document for dissemination and further discussion after today's meeting. So the floor is now open. If you'd like to be recognized to offer comments regarding the draft call to action. Yes, Dr. Hall.
Any comments? I think it's an excellent document, and I want to thank the commissioner. I think he's done a good job. As you said, you can get lost in the wilderness on transformation. That is one of the things, and this is a very good roadmap. And I also want to thank Holly, because I had the privilege of serving as the subcommittee chairperson on that profile of a learner, and no matter what our work is, this is what's most proud of the work, because KDE staff does all the work, and so do all the districts, but as you said, we're stewards, and I think this is a great document, but I do want to commend the commissioner. I think he's leaving a great legacy of road work for us to continue on into the future, as we know that when we started this, that change doesn't happen overnight. It's going to be 7 to 10 years, as Michael Fulham will say, to implement this roadmap, and but it's a good thing going, and it gives us great foundation to continue for the future. So I applaud him and the staff, Meredith and the other ones that did all the work on it. You know, getting it to this point. When we started, it was a blank page, and it's been a lot of work by a lot of people, but great work, and it's one of the best strategic roadmaps, you know, that I've seen. So I just want to say that.
I'll respond real quick. Thank you, Randy, and just to note that I really didn't do much except sort of preside over the good work that the department staff does on this. So they are the ones that deserve the credit.
But I mean, you know, and I'm saying that because, you know, at the some of those meetings, I questioned, what was this? What was this? What was this? And how does it come together? Well, it's come together very good. So I just want to state that.
I was just going to add that exact comment and part of the Love Fest to thank you, Randy, because you were supportively insistent that we get to the place that we could say to people, here's who we are and here's what we're about, and begin to put communication meat on the bones of the conversations. And then the other thing, I love it that you called it road work. The other thing that I think that has been accomplished in the document, Meredith and team, is that we really have paved a pathway forward for us as a board, moving beyond Jason's time with us, and as we move ahead and begin to put into practice what we talked about yesterday, we have some very strategic pieces of information that do come together as that roadmap, the road work that Randy's been asking us for all along. So.
Other comments?
Yeah, I have and I'm going to play I'm a new person on the block card.
Do it.
So keep that in mind. I've looked at this document very carefully from June until up to the present. And I was confused at first when I saw it, and I did not understand who was the call to action. Is the call to action from the board? Is it from the State Department? Who is the actual call to action from? So I think that's. And then we've got Kentucky Board of Education there on the front, and then we've got United We Learned at the bottom. So to me, that was very confusing, and would be if I was out in a district and looked at this, okay, is this something KDE is telling me to do, or is this actually from the board? Okay, on page 1, and I'm just going to I won't go over everything I wrote in here because it would take too long. But the second thing, under the vision, and I've read this several times, and I will admit I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so it says each and every learner will become a productive, engaged citizen, prepared for school, work, and a happy life. Wonderful vision statement. My question is, how can I say what your happy life is going to be? So happy is the word that I'm drawing a blank on. I think that, I don't know, that to me that is not an appropriate word to use, so I'll just leave it there and say what I got to say. I think there are other things there, their chosen career, what they choose to do in life, but I can be happy right now and walk out that door and not happy any longer. So I didn't fulfill the vision. So the other thing that I'm really, really struggling with is on page 3 that talks about first, second, third paragraph there. Amplify our voices in support of historically underrepresented students, their families, and educators, and listening to their aspirations and leveraging those aspirations to guide our actions. The terminology of historically underrepresented students, what are you talking about? Are they class offerings that we're talking about, programs? Are we talking about students of ethnicity and race, underrepresented? What are we talking about? Because the representation depends on the population. So that was the other, and I won't go, but this is really exciting. It's an action plan. It's something that could be implemented. It's something that we need to have been doing all along, looking at the whole child, putting the onus of teaching and learning on the learner. And one of the things I would always ask my teachers, and at the end of the day, who should go home being most tired? Should it be you as teacher, or should it be the students? So that's always a good question, and I know I think who should be the most tired of the day, who's done the most work, who the work is responsible for. And to me, it's not the teacher that goes home dragging in the students out, we had a good time today. So this is wonderful. Gosh, this is exciting. This is what we need to be about. This is hard to measure because we've got a lot of soft skills in there. And it focuses in my opinion, on that learning that a lot of students will come to school with and some don't. That curriculum that's, you know how to line up and do this as elementary kids. But if I come from, for example, if you went to my church and you just sat there and didn't, when the preacher is preaching and never said hallelujah, raised your hand, or did anything, my minister would say, all you dead people in here need to go to the cemetery. I'm not hearing anything from you. And then when we get kids at school and they go to school and the teacher asks a question and they raise their hand, and then all of a sudden, they're acting out their ADHD, ADH, and all the other acronyms. So just think about that, and it's not any big deal probably for anybody else, but someone like me who is an A-type personality and is really passionate about what we need to be doing for kids.
I would, because I asked that question early on, when I'd ask you to bring Dr. Tucker Woods up, or the commissioner can respond to our DEI work that represents those unrepresented students without identifying each one of those in a document. I think he could explain that real well, the work he's been doing over the last year and a half. That's up to you.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I encourage Diane to ask these questions of the whole group, because this is a time for us to work out those words. For the people who don't know that, especially our new board members, in fact, some of our other board members may not remember, we actually inherited this vision statement. As a board team, we've not revisited it. I love Happy in there, and I really, that kind of speaks to my heart in terms of, I want them to be prepared and engaged citizens, but when I think about my 4 grandchildren going through public schools, I want them to be happy. Is it measurable? No. Diane's exactly right. Is it up to us to ensure that happiness? I think there are steps that we can take in the whole child work that we do to ensure that happens, but we haven't revisited the vision. That could be appropriate for us to do. And I'm really loving the challenge to think about the notion of historically underrepresented. I thought we were choosing a word that would help us be both broad and specific in that conversation, but maybe we aren't there yet. So with Randy, Thomas, team, Jason,
I'll just.
what do we want to say?
I'll just briefly weigh in to say thank you for that really thoughtful critique. And Meredith and the team at the department, we'd love to take the notes that you have and work on continuing to revise and improve this and bring back and allow the board to continue a dialogue around this. So we really want this to be reflective of the entire board and something that you all are supportive of. This question of what's the right term and what's the right groups is a really tough question. We've ranged from disadvantaged to underserved to historically underserved to historically disadvantaged and
marginalized,
and all of there's wisdom and in all of those terms. There really is, but it is a difficult choice as to which one you're going to go with. So I think that's something for the board to wrestle with. Is like, what is the pardon me, what is the right term for this group of students?
And keep in mind, this is a communications goal, and so I think we really meant underrepresented, and maybe historically threw us off, Diane, because what we tried to do Jason tried to do, I can't own this, through the listening tour was to center the voices of folks that usually weren't centered voices. So we said to ourselves, let's go after the not so usual suspects. So we were centering underrepresented folks, pardon me, in a very intentional way. And this is a communications piece. So maybe the historically throws us off there, because it was abroad. We wanted voices from Appalachia. We wanted voices of people of urban and rural communities. We wanted people of every racial and ethnic background, and people who represented other sectors, families. We really tried to center families and students in the conversation as well. So, so I do think it might connote, as you're saying, something that's either confusing or maybe not what we intended it to say.
You know, I think this is really an important conversation, because I just don't want us to avoid, you know, kind of the elephant in the room, and I don't want us to be undisciplined about embracing the full gravity of what we're talking about. Historically underrepresented in everything, economic, in the voice, geographic, and I think we have to say frequently historically underserved. And it is, so we have to kind of own that in many ways we are reaping what we have sown in. And so where we see students not thriving, we've not lived up to the challenge of creating an environment in which they can thrive, at least through education. I mean, we have to own that. And so let's continue to struggle with this. Whatever we adopt for further dissemination and discussion will be perfected with our continued struggle. But I don't want us to underplay the gravity of what it is that, you know, that Diane has asked us to look at this again and figure out what it is you're trying to say.
I think we also looked at the fact that when we looked at our particular data, I mean, you know, I'm embarrassed to say when we go out that only 40% of our African-American students are reading on grade level. Historically, that's been the case, and we haven't changed anything. So to just sit there and say that we underachieving readers is not the answer to what we've done with our Spanish or ESL population and the others. So we got a 60% over here if we segregate that out, and we got 40%, so that means we're not even at 40%. It means we're way down. We're way down. And we refuse to do anything about it. And we've got to do something about it. We have deaf ears to the historical things that's occurred. I mean, you know, you've been in education 40 to 50 years. I've been in 40 plus years, and we haven't targeted. And we sit there and say, we know, why don't we just do this? But did we really ask the community of African-American students that's underrepresented in the data how we can teach them better to read? Or what are we teaching? Or in the concepts wrong? Or are they slanted in our assessments? Do we, you know, we talked about the NAEP scores and the bias of NAEP scores and African-American students not doing well in that testing. So we've got to look at all those things when we do assessment. Is there bias in our assessments? Is there bias in our reading programs that we select from one culture to the next? Have we asked them? We haven't asked them. We've just said, here's a new basal reader and you're going to start reading.
We know what's best.
We know what's best. And we haven't taken and have those conversations with the different groups. That's the way I looked at that development statement there. And there, you know, it's kind of like the statement I said yesterday. There's other groups out here we're listening to, but we've never listened to these groups. So why are we listening to other groups before we listen to the population that's been well underserved for years? I mean, I came from an impoverished background, and I'm sitting here today. But no one's ever asked me why I had trouble reading growing up. In my 40 years, nobody's asked me that question. Couldn't read till the 7th grade, okay? nobody ever asked me why and what could be done better. So that's what we're talking about, I think, of getting out there and asking those people, and us as a board willing to listen to different groups coming in instead of saying what, well, I mean, that's what I take from it. I'm just.
So Randy.
And I had a
you're-
tough time with all that too, but I mean, that's where Dr. Tucker Woods has educated me over the last year. I mean, from the first time I heard him speak at a KASA event, I'm sitting there's no way. And I'm now biggest advocates of some of the work that we're doing, so, because he's changed that attitude. We've got to do more of that. I've got to listen more, and we as a board got to listen more, I think.
So,
I'm just adding comment to I'm not trying to I'm just adding context to where I've come from that statement too. I think we all have a problem with that, but it's like we've also discussed here that we continue to perpetuate the myth year after year when we look at the test scores and say, okay, do better, but we don't find out why we're doing what we're doing.
So let me just kind of put a pin in this, guys. What we're saying to ourselves is that we can't amplify our voice on this because we haven't heard enough. And we perhaps at this moment don't even have an authentic voice as a board, because until it gets informed by these people that are not represented, it is not valid. So perhaps it leads us to, I want to get to Mrs. Powell and Mrs. Bloodworth next, because it leads us to this question of who do we listen to next, and what posture do we take in our listening? And so, Julie.
Yeah, so I just, on page 3, the very last one, the very last sentence where it specifies 3 particular organizations, I think that can be alienating to other organizations, so maybe just finishing that sentence at partnerships. We have Pritchard Committee doing all kinds of work, we have civic organizations, so rather than specifying like 3 specific organizations out, have it be more inclusive.
I really appreciate the fresh eyes looking at this, and I think what really hit me was looking at the cover. I think maybe we need an introductory paragraph on the second page that introduces the document. So I appreciate that. I do like Happy Life, though. Just because, me too. I know. And it isn't measurable, but to me, it is symbolic of us looking at the whole child and valuing emotional health and social emotional learning, those parts of the child. So, I mean, maybe there's a different word, but I like that concept that it is a holistic vision.
Yeah, I think that missing preface really does.
Yeah.
And it does what Randy's suggesting too, in that we get clear as a team what the purpose of the document is and what we're going to do.
Who it's from, who
how
it's
it
to,
is.
what
Yeah.
is the purpose.
Yeah, because I wonder if we would answer the question, when the call to action for me, to Diane's question, was, this is a call to action for us? Oh, okay, good. I was thinking, maybe I'm the only one who thinks that. But
Call to
yeah,
action.
this is a call to action to ourselves. So maybe we should say that. Yeah.
I looked at it always as it's a call to action to us to drive our particular work on every decision that we're making with the KBE staff. That's the way I looked at it. And then it's a call to action that the districts would know what our focus is and where we're going as a board, because people always ask me and they'll ask you, what are you doing as a board? Well,
What are
here's
you
your
doing?
document.
Yeah.
This is what it is. Because otherwise, it was us getting together 4 times a year and approving compliancy issues as opposed to directional issues of adaptive change for the organization. Because our job is the adaptive work. We have to do compliancy each quarter, but our real job is where is the education leading in the state of Kentucky for our K-12, aligning to workforce development in our post-secondary environment. And that's why I said this is, to me, the most rewarding work is when we're doing this work and not the sitting here 2 days just approving agenda items that come up,
Dr. Todd?
I'm looking at page 2, and I'm thinking back to the admonition the gentleman from Fleming County gave us yesterday about being an advocate and hanging in there with them. And when I'm giving a lot of talks to different legislators over the years, because you get a new administration come in or a new commissioner come in, and everybody wants to try something slightly different. It's like having a 2x4 on a table, and they always take these 10-penny nails and tap them in place and have all these things they look like a structure, but they don't stick with them long enough. You can thump them and they'll fall over. We got to keep hitting this thing into the ground so that we make a base that lasts. And when I look at the theory of action, words that end in ing bother me a bit, like they're just continuing. I think at the bottom of the air, we need to say something like "done." Put something on there like, you know, what is this theory of action? What is this pathway? Or put in something that says we got to advocate the heck out of this. You know, we got a good choir here in this room, maybe but we got a bunch of members who aren't in the choir, and we've got that's hard work, and it's not sure. And when I saw those folks yesterday presenting what they're doing, we need to have, you know, passion going through this state that everybody ought to jump on board and get it done. And I'm not sure I have any recommendations on it, but when you say theory of action, I want to see something that's more imperative and reaches some level of completion to say, now we're there.
Well, I think that, you know, on page 14, and I've stated this, and I think our exercise yesterday stated that when we get to an approved of a re-imaged assessment and accountability system, that's when we reach the end of our roadmap to guide districts that they know that if they're those L3 districts that we're working, that's what they say, we have to shape that. If we don't shape that, we're never going to get there. So our end in mind for this thing is how do we drive that competency-based goals within that theory of action for the learners to be the profile of the learner, and we're assessing that profile, and we changed our assessment system to be in line with that. Then we can say we got to the end of the road, but the road now starts anew. And that road is how do we perfect that system as we continue to move forward without abandoning the system like we did 10, 15 years ago when we had a good roadmap going at that time in the state, and then we abandoned it.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
I was reminded, we were talking about this yesterday, that until you really get those assessments in place, a lot of people aren't going to pay much attention. When you try to introduce a new concept or a new product into a market, you pray that there's a market driver, something that's going to drive people to do it. I was trying to sell teleconferencing back in the 80s, and until we had some kind of a major disaster where people didn't want to get on airplanes, that started pushing teleconferencing and so forth. And overnight, you started finding people changing their attitude about some things. And I do think that is an endpoint. It's tough. What I'm impressed with is how far along these two guys were yesterday with respect to the assessment process. Because this is mushy stuff. It's soft stuff, as you were saying. But until you, so there may be something here about how we get to the point where we've got the market driver so the people, even the people who don't want to pay attention have to pay attention.
And I think David Cook, you know, and I didn't address this yesterday, and I probably should have, but I think David Cook, you know, and it was in our top 10, is that you know, the goal of innovation fund there, of driving that, because if we don't have additional funds to help those districts to be those pioneers, they're investing a lot of capital themselves. And there's others who would like to do the work, but they say, okay, I don't have the investment of that capital to be able to do it. So we do have to have an incentive fund to get some of them to jump on that bandwagon, because we only got 42 districts up there, I think, yesterday on that chart that, or 42 districts that didn't even start this work. So how do we get them getting that work started? And I think that was the other thing from that activity yesterday, is we have to celebrate those like we did yesterday and publish what they're doing. And it's also incumbent on us to get out, if David would give us a list of those L3 schools, which he would do, give us a list though, and in between our meetings, go out and visit them and see it and report back to it. And they're the ones doing this roadmap work. So, I mean, I'd, you know, love to be able to do that in between, you know, and celebrate that work and publish it, because that's who's leading this work.
So let me just interject here. I'm hearing a little something in addition to the content, which we can continue to work on. I'm hearing the need to direct ourselves, if you will, in terms of advocating for getting to this reimagined assessment and accountability system. Because I dare say, while it is a very important component of United We Learn, right now, I'm sensing that while you know that the assessment and accountability system stands as a really almost impenetrable barrier sometimes to doing some of the teaching that you want to do, changing that, everybody just, that's really almost unimaginable. So there's some tactical questions here with whom we've got some early adopters and some interested pioneers and some folks who have started the journey and have made very impressive progress. Who do we tell? I think we're at a different level here and probably second guessing ourselves a little bit because we haven't started talking about the steps that we take. With whom do we engage to effectively advocate for this goal, a reimagined assessment and accountability system? I asked RJ yesterday, could we come and talk to some students about this? He said, well, yeah, maybe some at lunch. Because what they are focused on as, efficient, effective students is getting it done, getting the credentialing done that they need to go on with their lives. But we know that some students who've been involved in some of the United We Learn work can give voice to how important it is to experience a vibrant learning exercise which is documented and validated in a different way. They can give voice to that. So I don't know. I think, while I don't want us to second guess ourselves on the work that we have done, I do want us to perfect this to the extent that we can with the language, but then get to the point where we are getting specific and we are holding ourselves accountable for what it takes to make this happen.
Chair Robinson?
So I think we've got a two-step process here.
Chair Robinson, if I may, the goals are typically established each October. And so the goals that are in this document were approved by the board last October, and we are tentatively scheduled to revisit the goals this coming October as well. And so those would change. So one option would be to pull them from the document so that we don't have outdated language, if the board should decide to have new goals. Last year, the goals really did carry forward from the year prior, and we made just minor tweaks. But in the past, boards have had entirely new sets of goals each year, so that's really up to you to discuss. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing I think is important for us to think about is that with the assessment accountability, so that road ahead is really sort of the primary focus for what we've identified as kind of the critical juncture for a lot of the United We Learn implementation efforts. That assessment and accountability system we have heard from our communities over the last few years is really a hindrance for them to fully commit to this transformed system. And so that's almost like the focal point, whereas the theory of action really, I think, could be cyclical in that when we bring forward other initiatives, we would follow a similar path with the listening and the co-creation, some of those habits we talked about yesterday.
Yes. So I think you bring up a really good point. I was thinking, trying to find a new word, but you're right. We adopted these in October.
We did.
So if we stamp that in such a way that it makes it clear that these are the goals that were adopted October 2022, but then we now have a preview of the kind of conversation we're likely going to have around these when October rolls around again in a couple of months. So I think that's important. I would suggest that, Meredith, rather than pulling it, because we are looking at something that does synthesize various important visionary conversations that we've had into one document. And I also just want to remind everybody of pages 9 through 13. I think that we just take these for granted, but they are really quite wonderful in terms of belief statements for an organization like ours. And I think they're going to do us a lot of long-range service. And for those who aren't aware, these all bubbled up out of United We Learn subcommittees, so, and have been vetted across the council for the staying power that they offer. So I think that's really helpful. And then my last comment on page 14, Sharon, to your point, the two pink boxes, in my mind, I almost envision like we could click on that, Meredith, and find more details about how we are engaging with other shareholders to align to the vision, and how we are, what our advocacy efforts might look like. So in an electronic format, I think we could always drill into these things even more deeply.
I think that when we were doing, and different committees were working on the different things, it's tried to encapsulate all the different work. So I think that is the next iteration of this thing. And I do agree with, there's no document that's ever complete. If it is, then we're wrong. So there's an evolution. So I think we've got good things to look at, as Meredith said, for October. So we had a lot of work from October to where we are. And I think what we have to do today, before we do leave, is adopt a document, because, that elephant in the room, as we are looking for a new commissioner, this is a roadmap of our interview process. I mean, as we're looking for a commissioner, we don't want a new commissioner that's going to start us backward. We want somebody that's got to lead this work into the next iteration of the things and the legacy of this work. So keeping in mind that we need to go back after we adopt it, and we'll be making changes as we go in October, especially since we have new committees we established yesterday. There will be a new look as we continue, because you got new blood, because I was on this and I'm not on that anymore. I'm on an ATC. Others are on that in the Teaching and Learning Committee. So that's a whole new look at it, come afterwards from all the committees that were reestablished. And Meredith, bless you, having to get a bunch of new people started over. But I think that's part of our education process here. Like I said before, I didn't understand some of this. Dr. Tucker Woods helped me with that. It's a long process to go through. So we do need something to, when we start a search, we have to have something that we as a board are saying that this is our work, and we're looking for a commissioner who is doing our work and not coming up and starting this work all over again and upsetting the apple cart. The legacy of this board is continuing this work onward and getting this done. As Lee Todd said, I'm tired of hammering little nails in a 2x4 and not driving them down too. I love that analogy he always says. And this, to me, is finally laying the 2x4 out there so we can drive those nails through it.
I want to say, Chairman, I'm not second guessing anything we've done. I'm just thrilled with what we have done.
Exactly.
I just want to let that ring in our ears, what he said, that we've got to commit to doing it. And I think page 14, I feel a lot better about with that star at the bottom and the approval of the reimagined assessment accountability system. That's when we really start, waking up some people out there that may not wake up. So that helps me
That
feel
says,
better.
ah.
It says, get it done.
Chair Robinson, if I could propose, because I do think we have some editing to do with the current version, just to be sure that everyone's comfortable, since we are planning to have a special called meeting on the 21st, we could potentially delay approval until that date and make that one of the agenda items on the special called meeting. It does, as Dr. Poe mentioned, make sense given that that conversation will be around launching the search for the new commissioner. So we could work between now and then to make sure that the edits that have been identified are all made, and send those drafts back and forth to the board in advance of that meeting. I do agree, though, that this will be a living document that we continue to iterate as we have other priorities identified.
Well, it's clear that we've had the benefit of fresh eyes and, a fresh perspective.
Always.
I mean, yes, so I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing it all to the table. Let me ask the board's pleasure here. Are you ready to approve this document pending further edits, and with the understanding that is kind of a living document? I mean, we're going to get better at articulating our interests and our intentions. And we are going to get intentional about what our next steps are to fulfill the intentions of this call to action. Or do you want a further draft brought to you? I think we can see a further draft at our next meeting, even the call meeting. So let me just get a sense of, do you want to delay the action on this for a couple of weeks so that we can bring it up to speed? Would that be more comfortable?
I'll make a motion that we do what Meredith just said before. Next meeting, after she does that revision.
The Meredith
Okay,
motion.
we will consider this, the motion is that we consider this
That we table it till
subsequent
that
draft
Just
at
table.
the August 21st meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of bringing a subsequent draft to the August 21st meeting for deliberation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would abstain.
Okay, thank you. Please note. All right. Phew. This is good work, but I really appreciate the sincerity of the board's determination to figure this out. And it will serve us in very, very important ways in the not too distant future. All right. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. And the first item on the consent agenda is the Kentucky Technology Systems Operational Plan for School Year 2023-24. We'll ask KDE Associate Commissioner David Couch.
Chair Robinson, this one we'll do as a full slate of all the items, so we won't actually have formal
Oh,
presentations.
this is
for
the
that.
consent agenda, yes. You're right. As a reminder, this item, which requires a vote, consists of the consent agenda and allows for approval in one action. I was about to give you a litany of about, you don't want that. That's on the portal. So KDE staff identified these items as those that are non-controversial and routine in nature. The consent agenda was distributed to members in advance of the meeting to allow sufficient time for review. At this time, does any member wish to have any of the consent items removed to the regular discussion agenda? Okay. If there are no items to be moved, I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we so approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we're to the action agenda. And the first item is an amendment to 701 KAR 5:110, use of local monies to reduce unmet technology needs. Now we'll call Associate Commissioner Couch. He could have been coming up. KDE Division Director Mike Leadingham, and the KDE Chief Digital Officer Marty Park to present.
Thank you. This is an item that comes before the board once every 6 years. The law requires it done to be at least every 5 years, but we line it up with bienniums. So as far as the regulation is concerned, the only thing that's changing in the regulation It's changing it from our current plan, which is 2018 to 2024, to say 2024 to 2030. So that's the only changing in the regulation itself. And the plan obviously has been modernized. And this reminds me of, from a teacher perspective, lesson plans. So this is our 6th version of our KETS master plan. And just like lesson plans, typically by the 6th version, you got a pretty good version of that, and you feel pretty good about it. It's not that you don't modernize it and change it as times go along, but we actually felt our 5th master plan was the best one we had ever created. And so we just modernized and updated portions of our 6th master plan to what we have today. So within that master plan, you will see, and I'll give you some orders of priority, is the budget that lays out what's needed annually and over 6 years. Kentucky is the best position in the United States to know what we're spending with technology with both local funds, state, and federal. And that's because we have product standardization in our financial management system, Munis. We have product standardization in our school formation system. We have product standardization in our internet service. And these give us really the edge on the other 49 states in a variety of things, but including really actually seeing where the money is going. And so we actually have empirical data that we take a look at spending patterns of districts of what they have spent money on to project what they will continue to be spending money on. So that's a real strength of the budget that you saw of $430 million annually for a $2.5 billion budget over a 6-year period. The other part that you'll notice in the plan itself is areas of emphasis. This is based on the Future Ready framework that's used by some other states. We've also encouraged our districts to use that as well. When you'll see in the areas of emphasis, the things that we want to keep on doing well, because sometimes in planning, all you're focused in on the things you want to improve on. But it's important, I think in every aspect, especially technology, to identify the areas that are going well that you want to keep on doing well. And you see those in the plan itself. Also, you see areas that we want to improve on and get better at in areas of growth. For example, artificial intelligence is something that's been around for a while, but pretty new in the context of its impact on education going forward. So you see that as one of our areas of emphasis going forward. Within the appendix itself, you can see research and studies that have been done since 1992 on technology. And we always want to remind folks that certain things have been studied before they study them again. And this offers some great context over a period of time, what we put in place. We also have in there our timeline since 1992. And during your time as board members, you can see the things that we have accomplished during that time, along with your time in school districts throughout the course of time since 1992. This is obviously not everything that's been accomplished, but it's kind of like a greatest hits album of things that we've done since 1992 to remind folks of that. We're proud of that, but we're always looking to get better. You also see an emphasis on district planning within there. The law also requires districts to do district technology planning. Typically, that's closely tied with their educational plan and how technology lays on top of that to achieve their educational goals. And I always tell folks is technology by itself is not something you need to focus in on. What's your educational goals and how can technology help you? There you allow you to achieve your educational goals much more effectively and getting those in place. So that's an overview of the plan itself and the major changes to it. And I'll just pause there for any kind of questions that you may have.
Any questions? Yes. Mrs. Powell.
So I'm kind of curious, as far as supporting ELL students, are you seeing more and more requests from districts for technology to help support those students?
Yes, absolutely. So, but you know, the plan itself addresses all types of students. So, you know, this is all encompassing. And that's always been since 1992. And the cool thing for me being around since the very first master plan is it was all encompassing. Every level of student and equity of access and opportunity for all students across the state. And it's the main reason I joined the Department of Education many years ago. As most of you heard me say, I'm really known as Mrs. Couch's son, a beloved teacher in Johnson County. And her passion for education obviously has come to me and a good number of our family members as well. But yes, we're definitely seeing that. Marty, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I would just add, and you can kind of see it play out in the plan and in the budget where more districts are including software, resources, and tooling, technology, learning tools for groups of students with need.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Well, I have one. Marty and I had a conversation about virtual learning in the state, and we were required to consider regulations regarding that. And is there kind of a status report that you can give us about virtual learning and how it is being used as a supplement or as a primary delivery system? How are we allocating ourselves to support the local decision regarding virtual learning?
That's in Marty's wheelhouse. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So in the areas of emphasis, you will highlight and note where we are wrapping more high-quality measures, but work with our school districts. So you'll see throughout the state, you see more and more school districts who are focusing and targeting high-quality virtual, online, and remote learning. And so we have a team that's working across the state to build that network with schools and districts who are offering the programs. And so we're very pleased with that growth. We have about 40 or so school districts who are engaged in that network. It's very exciting to see that shift into that space.
The one thing about the pandemic, and there's plus and minus of it, one is that from a technology perspective, it accelerated a lot of our technology goals that we have for 2018 to 2024. I don't want to encourage another pandemic to do that again for our 2024 to 2030. But, you know, we moved to one-to-one very rapidly. We've always seen the benefit of digital learning coaches helping teachers maximize technology in their instruction. We've seen the virtual learning. I mean, it's not for every student, but we've definitely seen the benefits of that as one of the tools in the toolbox that are out there. We have a higher percentage of teachers, and you can see that from our infographic. They're now embracing technology in their learning process and as far as their toolbox. We have things like online registration now, to where that really eliminates, as we're getting the school year, you know, the kind of bumps in the road you have beginning of the school year with in-person registration. You can do that way ahead of time. You know, our virtual library we're able to put out there, and definitely our internet usage exploded during that time, and it's not reversing. And so we definitely see that as definitely one of the tools in the toolbox. Has then been there a while, and even virtual meetings. Even the board's transition to using virtual and virtual meetings, and that's something that we were not at the point we're at today. Now you are pretty savvy in using these tools. So once again, I'm hoping not for another pandemic to do that, but definitely we've seen the acceleration, and that's going to have a sticky factor of staying around.
Thank you. Other questions?
A quick question, I don't want to belabor it too long, but I have been working with the National Ed Tech Plan, so I've had so many amazing conversations about this work. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about, and Marty and I have had these conversations too, is the national folks are thinking of it in terms of bridging the digital access divide, the use divide, and the design divide. And I think that's really smart in that we can put a lot of tools in the hands of teachers, and if they don't have the training to design around the best application of those tools, then we didn't hit the mark. And but the one that always gives me the most heartburn is the access divide that we experience for those families who don't have access to devices or the internet in the home. And so I just wondered what kind of Kentucky conversations we're having. I know Jefferson deployed hundreds of MiFi devices, and a lot of the counties have stepped up to ensure that kids do have access. I remember a family member when I was in Jessamine, and it was so long ago it's probably not applicable, but she reminded me that she had 4 grandchildren in the home, all who needed the same computer in a row in order to get their homework done. So, so at-home access, I think, is what I want to just have a little bit of a conversation about.
Well, let me hit on a couple pieces of that. I do want to remind, we have some new board members, that Kentucky was the very first state to have internet access to all of its schools, and we did that back in the 1990s. So people sometimes get confused when they hear kids don't have it. They think our schools don't have it.
Yeah, I mean at home.
So I'm just educating educating some of the new members here. The other part is, for the past 15 years, we've been tracking the internet access at home. And the other 49 states really didn't do it like us, because we really understand it's a significant overwhelming advantage educationally to have that. Now, there's a different level of bandwidth that's needed for certain applications versus instruction. And we found through our surveys for quite some time that 95% of Kentucky homes have enough bandwidth for students to do schoolwork. Now, there's another 3% of that, bring up to 98%, you have that on the infographic, that there's someplace close they can walk to get to or go to. Now, you don't want to have them leave the home to do that. Now, there's some major federal programs that are helping out with that. The ACP program, the Affordability Connectivity Program, Kentucky is one of the best about making parents aware of that. That helps pay for $30 a month for internet access. Probably the challenge is making sure those low-income parents are aware of that. And so we've been doing some things, for example, through Infinite Campus. Once again, the plus side of having a statewide information system is we can do things to make parents aware through the parent portal. So that's one of the avenues we're making them aware of it. But to be honest with you, from a parent's perspective, especially low-income parent, there's a lot of steps you got to go through in the forms you got to fill out to apply for that. And sometimes, you know, it's embarrassing to them, say, to go through the qualifications to prove that they're poor when, you know, that's a tough thing to do. But we do have a high percentage of folks that are taking advantage of that. But that is something that we're closely, you know, monitoring. Obviously, there's a lot of new wave of federal money that's trying to close that remaining divide that's out there. I think for Kentucky, that's like $1.4 billion, and that's just not educationally. That's for all the homes that are remaining out there. And you know, Superintendent Trimble, you know that, you know, from Johnson County, we have outstanding internet access. You know, last mile fiber throughout there, just not educationally, and there's a couple of different providers that are there. We realize not every county has that in kind of rural areas. Obviously, urban areas typically have 5 or 6 major providers that are there. So it's not having the access, it's the affordability of it. That's what we find the challenge of it, is a parent, low-income parent, may have 6 options, but they can't afford any of them. And therefore, that ACP program is very important to make sure those low-income parents are aware of that capability to get out there. And it's just not last mile wired, it's last mile wireless as well. That's where you're talking about the MiFi devices, Mark.
Just a quick add that we are a nation-leading state in ACP participation, so Affordable Connectivity Program participation. We're currently leading the country in student family participation, which is nice for us to see. I also mentioned we've had a heads up with that national ed tech plan.
Yeah, you got to be a
and so we've
provider of
included
feedback.
major digital equity components inside of our areas of emphasis, which we're excited to work with our districts on.
One other point, the Lifeline program has been around since 1998, and it's part of the federal E-rate program, which Kentucky is also a top 5 state in maximizing. That was $10 per month. But you had only probably 10% of the parents actually taking advantage of that. And I think a lot of that had to do with not being aware. And also someone to walk them through the steps. So, you know, we're pretty proud of being, you know, one of the national leaders of making parents aware and actually taking advantage of that. The important part is to keep that program going. And so we've had discussions, and myself directly, with the FCC on the importance of this is just not a one-time thing. This has got to be continuous for us to have equity of access and opportunity for kids beyond the school campus.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Associate Commissioner Crouch, how do you interface with Kentucky Education Television?
Oh, yes. I'm one of their board members. Yes.
No, I hear that in a lot of schools that I go to in my work, that sometimes they can't get the program that they need or et
We actually
cetera.
have probably one of the best relationships between an Department of Education and a KT equivalent in any part of the country. So we work very, very closely with them. And obviously during the pandemic, we worked, you know, it required us to get the new tools out there. And the nice part is they take advantage of, instead of being in competition, typically you see that in sometimes the state agencies of other states. They've always understood when we put internet to all the schools to take advantage of that versus putting in a duplicative system. Of course, they're trying to reach homes as well through a variety of methods. And actually, they're finding online is one of the best ways to reach them because you can record it and watch it later that way and on demand. And so we actually have an initiative with them to upgrade their network infrastructure within KET. And so that was a joint effort between the Department of Education and them to upgrade it so they can continue to produce high-quality broadcasts.
We also have with Kentucky Education Television, KET, a great partnership for our digital learning work and our digital learning coach network, as well as they're the prime partner with our online virtual and remote learning network as well, bringing school districts together to push forward that high-quality work. So they're a key partner.
Thank you.
I would always say I want to give KT a plug. They're fun to work with.
Yeah.
And they do great work.
Well, I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the amendment to 701 KAR 5:110, use of local monies to reduce unmet technology need. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trimble, is there a second? Dr. Poe. Further discussion? I'll put the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any nay vote? Motion carries. Thank you so much. The next item is the 2022 report, 2022 exceptions, and 2024 plan as required by 702 KAR 1:116, annual in-service training of district school members. KDE General Counsel Todd Allen and Kentucky School Boards Association Director of Board Team Development Deborah Webb will provide an overview of the report. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Board members, 702 KAR 1:116 is the state board's regulation implementing state law requirements that local board members receive annual in-service training. As part of this board's regulation, they have designated the Kentucky School Boards Association as the recognized provider of substantial number of hours of that training, and they've also designated KSBA as the entity that tracks and reports to you the training of all local school board members. We have with us Deborah Webb from the School Boards Association today. Yesterday, Deborah, it was established that Dale Hollow State Resort Park is at least 2.5 hours from any other place on earth, so we appreciate it.
Beautiful drive, though.
And I will turn it over to Deborah to walk you through the attachments that you have in your board packet and the information that's being presented.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start by commending our local district school board members on their efforts and the amount of just good work that they do within our state. We have 93% of our school board members in the Commonwealth of Kentucky who actually met their full training for 2022. 82% of that number actually exceeded the goal for their required training. If you'll look at attachment 1 in the report, we are reporting 10,922.25 hours of training for Kentucky school board members within the state. That is 2,814.25 hours above the mandated number that they are supposed to get. So 787 of our school board members who served within the year 2022 actually exceeded. Attachment B is the training offered from KSBA for the year 2022. I won't go through that. Attachment C is basically why we are here today. These are the members who did not meet their required training. Now, just a couple of notes about that. That's 7% of our school board members who did not meet their training. 19 of those members were appointed after March the 1st of 2022. 15 of those members came back into service in 2023, and 33 of those members, for whatever reason, did not seek re-election to their seats and did not come back to service as of January 1st, 2023. We have 67 members that this report is speaking of today. Of that, 462 hours were completed by those 67 members. The additional hours that we are seeking to have an exception and an extension for 373.75 hours. Now, if you take into account the 33 members who did not seek to return to service, and you take out the 19 who were appointed after March the 1st, who will receive an extension anyway, we're technically only asking for 22.25 hour of extension for those 15 board members who did not complete their training within the allotted time, which ends on December 1st of 2022.
Yes.
Just to explain further, if the board approves this action item, we will work with Deborah and her office, obviously, to notify those individuals that they've been granted an extension to complete their training requirements, give them a reasonable opportunity to do so, and then if they do not do that, their names are reported to the Office of Attorney General for potential removal from their local school board office.
So I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the 2022 report, 2022 exceptions, and the 2024 plan as required by 702(1)(116, annual in-service training of district school board members. Is there such a motion?
I make a motion, we approve this action.
Is there a second?
Second, Woods.
Thank you, Member Woods. Is there further discussion, and do you have questions? We understand that while there's the exceptions pertain to those who did not fulfill the obligation, but will in the near future, and further monitoring and collaboration will assure us of that fact. Okay. Are you ready for the question then? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the collaboration, Ms. Webb. And I think we're now ready for our discussion of KBE legislative priorities. We talked about the ABRs yesterday, the budget request, and Brian Perry is here to facilitate a conversation regarding KBE legislative priorities. Brian?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So since we have some new members, I just wanted to give you all some just general information that you see there. I think most everybody knows that barring a special session, they won't be back until the first week of January. It is a budget session, so it's a 60-day session. It'll run right up until midnight on April 15th, most likely, by the end of which we'll have our new biennial budget. It'll kick in July 1 of next year. So you also see the dates that this year's legislation became law. We also put out non-regulatory guidance in two parts. We do the emergency clause bills first, so that's out there, and then we come back later and do all the other legislation. So just want to make sure you all are aware of where that all gets posted. And then finally, in June, we started the interim period. That'll run through November. So the interim period is actually pretty important. This is when the two chambers combine. So the two education committees meet jointly, for example, and hear about topics that are likely to come up in the next session. It really sort of gives you an idea of what we could see bills on next session. So if you get a chance to tune into some of them, they're all broadcast either on KET or on the LRC YouTube channel. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. I would say that in addition to the Education Committee, the Appropriations and Revenue is probably the other big one to watch, especially ahead of a budget session. The agendas get posted usually a week or two ahead of time, so you can kind of get an idea of if it's something that's worth watching or not. But anyway, just wanted to make sure you all were aware of those resources before we moved on. So in terms of our priorities, obviously the ABRs are something we've already started talking to legislators about. Some of those we'll probably have conversations about others as we go forward. Teacher recruitment and retention was a big topic of conversation last session and has been really over the last year. So last session we saw Chair Tipton, who chairs the House Education Committee, file House Bill 319. This was the omnibus bill for recruitment and retention. It started out really ambitious. We knew it would get scaled back. It did get scaled back quite a bit, but it was an important first step. I do anticipate that he will push for some of the things that got removed and required appropriations to get revisited this year during the budget session. You saw some of our ABRs are related to recruitment and retention. I do think that as a broad coalition, right, all of the stakeholders, so the K groups, our teachers, us, we probably do need to try to get on the same page on some of those items in order to really have a good chance at getting something done. I think someone pointed out the difference in the mentoring figures yesterday. So that's a good example of, where we, in the next couple of months, we really need to try to get all of us on the same page so that we can make a real concerted effort to push a couple of those. They are sitting on a really record surplus right now, so there's an opportunity for them to spend some of that money. I think there'll be a little wariness as they continue this drive to move from income tax to consumption or sales tax. And so we're still seeing that that transition. We're in sort of the beginning of that transition. So I do wonder if there'll be a little reluctance to spend down essentially their savings, so that, in the next couple of budget cycles, if that transition is a little more bumpy than we think it might be, they have that reserve there. I'm not an economist or an accountant, so take that for what you will. But I do think teacher recruitment and retention will continue to be a big point of emphasis. So I think the big one there is just getting everybody on the same page and making a couple of really specific requests that we can all support. So I don't know if you've heard Dr. Hargis and her team talk much about this one, but the CTE funding formula. So in the last budget, CTE got a huge boost that we were very appreciative for. It allowed them to fund programs equally regardless of where they're housed. So in the past, a welding program at a high school could be funded differently than one at an ATC or a LAVEC. So that record amount of funding did away with that issue, which is great. And so now they are putting forward a proposal to essentially codify that change, right? So that you would no longer have those different funding levels based on where a program is housed. So thankfully, Senator Givens is real interested in this and has offered to sponsor a bill for them, or for us. I think we've seen an early draft of that already, which is really encouraging. The senator is also part of Senate leadership, so it's obviously good when we have someone in leadership sponsoring a bill for us. So anyway, that's good. We may see a companion bill filed in the House, so essentially just the same version of the bill get filed in the House. It's pretty common. But anyway, we'll keep you posted on that one, but that's one we've already started meeting with folks on, obviously. OTL has a couple of changes to some language that was included in the 22 budget. Sorry, trying to make sure I get all my dates right here. Included in the 22 budget that would allow them to spend money that was appropriated for AP testing on additional wraparound services for students and teachers with the goal of increasing those test scores. So that's a fairly small change that we'll be putting forward. Statutory cleanup's a real broad one, but about a month ago, we asked the policy advisors in each department to start thinking about essentially outdated statutes. So think about reports that are required but don't really get read and or used for much of anything. statutes that may have been superseded, but they never went back and cleaned up, the old stuff, anything that would make life easier for folks in the districts is really the goal of this idea. So we're asking for those kind of thoughts on what can we do to make life easier in the districts by cleaning up some statutory requirements. I don't know if this is one we will put forward this session. There was some discussion about whether or not this would make more sense to wait until we have a new commissioner and let them put this forward as one of their first initiatives. We'll just kind of see how the timeline goes, but that's something that the policy advisors are currently working on. So hopefully in the next board meeting or two, we'll have some of that to share about some ideas on what we could do to make life a little easier in the districts just by getting rid of some things that are no longer necessary. Finally, Robin and her team wanted me to mention a couple of things related to facilities that are on the radar. So House Bill 678 was sponsored by former Representative Ed Massey. It's the bill that essentially did a pilot project. I don't think it was technically called a pilot project, but it was a pilot project that allowed districts to opt in sort of a red tape reduction, streamline the facilities process. So just codifying those changes, and so making them permanent, because 678 was only a 2-year, it only lasted for 2 years. So, and then providing districts with the final design of plan approval. So those are the ones that are on the radar from our end. The one that I forgot to put on here until yesterday while I was sitting here thinking about all of this, in one of our conversations, it was mentioned that there's some concern about the Supreme Court districts all having terms that expire at the same time. And so those are all those appointments in next April.
KBE board.
Yeah, KBE board members. So the Supreme Court appointments all expire at the same time. There's a little concern about keeping that the same because obviously that's a lot of change, potential change all at once. And so there was some talk about the legislature staggering those. So some of those seats would be appointed for 2-year terms, some for 3 years, some for 4-year, or something like that, in order to get on a staggered rotation so that not all of the 7 of those seats turn over at the same time, because potentially that's a lot of change all at once. So that's also something that we may see come up. And I think that we would be supportive of just in our initial conversations anyway. I don't think it was anything we were opposed to. Are there any questions about kind of what's on the radar on our end? Otherwise, I'll talk a little bit about what we might see from them. Yes, Vice Chair Young.
I wondered about, I had a brief conversation with Rep. Tipton around school finance reform. I see Robin's in the room, and the task force that led up to 678, I think Randy may have participated. There was a lot of conversation about the future of SEEK. Has SEEK outlived its elasticity, kind of where we might go there? I just wonder if there's any conversation. Is it up there?
Yes. Well, it's on the next slide. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're leading right into the next slide. So there are a few things that I think we'll see from the legislature that are priorities for them. So I just wanted to kind of mention some of those. One of those is, in fact, the student funding formula. So we have heard some preliminary conversations. I will say that it's difficult to sort of tease out where these are in the process. One chamber might be very interested, the other chamber may have no clue about this issue yet. So at times it's difficult to discern where in that process it is. But I do think, especially in the House, there's some conversations happening about moving to something different. There's also the ADM versus the average daily membership versus average daily attendance conversations that are happening. Chair Tipton has also been leading those conversations. He did file a bill last session or the session before to kind of initiate that conversation. I suspect we will see that again since he can call it to his committee. Haven't heard there. So those are on the radar. I don't know how close we are to seeing those things actually move forward. I suspect we're still a session or two away from really seeing movement, because so far I haven't seen or heard that those are going to be discussed in the interim yet. And I think that once we get to a point where they're getting serious about those changes, we will see some pretty serious conversations during the interim to really to lay the groundwork for them to file those bills and move it during the session. Other things on the radar, early literacy continues to be a high priority. You saw the Read to Succeed related ABR there. I think that that's one that's likely to get some traction. Chair Tipton and Chair West, who is Chair of Education in the Senate, are both big supporters of that. So that's there. Numeracy now has come up because they got early literacy kind of done with Read to Succeed, or not done, but they got the ball rolling, right? So I think there's real interest now in how can we do something similar for numeracy. And so I believe that Mickey Ray and her team are working on some suggestions or a proposal that'll be a great conversation, a place to start that conversation. I don't know that they have a lot of concrete ideas yet. So I think it's a great idea for us as KDE to initiate that conversation and give them some ideas or give them a place to start and kind of lead that conversation. But I think there's a lot of interest there. You may have heard that several other states have taken action to prohibit DEI either at the secondary, post-secondary, state office level. I think that we can absolutely think that this will happen next session. Best guess is it'll just be something very similar, no DEI offices in state agencies or post-secondary institutions, something like that. But the specifics I'm not sure on, but I think that we would be kidding ourselves if we weren't going to see that happen. So, and then the Supreme Court districts. So that's just kind of the short list of things that I think we'll likely see from the legislative side. Obviously, there'll be a lot more education bills filed. I've forgotten how many were filed last time, but it was a lot, over 100, I think, 160, 170. So it's a bunch. I'm sure we'll see a lot more during the budget session, but as always, we'll keep you all appraised. Do remember that there was a change a year ago that there's no longer pre-filing of bills. So this is still something we're all getting used to. So a legislator can post a draft for review if they choose to. They don't have to. So that's still something we're getting used to. So we'll likely see a number of bills drop during the session that we have not seen. This is something that Chair Young and I this summer, as we've been meeting with legislators, have tried to kind of talk that one of the goals of rebuilding some relationships with the legislature is to get to a point where we get more drafts earlier in the process so that we can provide feedback as the subject matter experts in all these different areas related to education. So hopefully as we continue forward, we will see a few more drafts and not quite as many surprise bills drop on us, and we can have input earlier in the process. Again, just to provide feedbacks as the subject matter experts in so many of these areas. So that's the really quick version of what's been happening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Todd, please.
On your first slide, you talk about CTE funding formula. Is that to codify what they've already funded, or is there some new money coming through?
No, it's not necessarily asking for any new money. It's just asking to change the way that the money is allocated out to the districts. So.
And then, can you say more about the AP funding change that's being considered, or is?
Vaguely. So this was just a paragraph that was in the 22 budget, and it would just make some changes to that language that would allow for a little more flexibility for the money that has been appropriated for the AP test in the past. If that money is not used if there's any leftover money after paying for the test, they could use it to provide supports to both students and teachers with the goal of increasing those test scores.
Last question, professional development was cut out some sessions before. We're putting it back in. Do you think they'll leave it in as we recommend it, or do you think they're going to put some caveats on it, or?
I'm not sure. I would imagine there'll be caveats, but that's just a guess at this point.
Thank you.
So, Brian, before you leave, Baron, would you come up and talk to us about EPSB and how we might work with them as the General Assembly raises issues like early literacy and teacher preparation, the issue of numeracy, which is going to bear on preparation, and both of those have a facet concerning professional development. We discussed trying to work together with EPSB to have a proposal that we could offer the General Assembly. Where are we? Is that possible? And how would you want us to engage with EPSB as these matters come up?
Sure. I believe we have a meeting scheduled.
We do. Yeah.
Yep. So we have that on the agenda, which is great. Naturally, I won't speak for Chair Mitchell or Vice Chair Weedman, so we're certainly going to adhere to their direction as well, but they certainly are very cordial and open individuals. But I invite any conversation with them as far as their roles in the actual board process. But we're more than willing and open to support any of those conversations that are suggested and or scheduled. I can say, as far as the efforts on the early literacy, it's just been a little over a week. The CACTE membership, they had their meeting in Louisville, the College of Teachers of Education, and Representative Tipton attended that meeting. So he was there nearly the full day, and so he had a firsthand view of sort of all the efforts that are taking place from the EPP perspective, especially regarding the early literacy work that's going on. Board Member Bloodworth had attended very kindly a meeting with a lot of information just recently, and we sort of set the table for the work that a group of specialists, literacy specialists from EPPs, and there are at least 20 individuals that are represented from the various institutions across the state. So there is a timeline, set goals. The establishment, number one, would be looking at the assessment that will need to be put in place by January 2024 regarding the early literacy reading component of the licensure assessments. So we have action that's taking place currently in that realm. We've certainly been in conversation with Mickey Ray and OTL regarding the possibility of having our EPPs early on in anything that would address numeracy. They're certainly very interested, and we have had just sort of initial conversations in terms of bolstering support or invitation to be a part of the conversation. So we're trying to be on the front end of that. Very thankful also that OTL Mickey Ray is helping us support our EPP leaders in terms of the training, involvement in the letters and the reading academies. So we're gaining some traction in terms of their participation, as well as being able to sort of honor their time along with that and the Read to Succeed funds that have been allocated. So we've been moving in those two specific directions, just as a quick update in terms of the two items that are mentioned on the slide there. But certainly, of course, look forward to the meeting coming up here in, I think, a couple weeks at most.
August 24th.
August 24th. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
So Holly, did you want to comment on your?
No, I just thought it was a really productive meeting. It was nice to see so many different universities represented. I mean, I liked the variety. I felt like everyone was interested in the work and liked being kind of on the forefront of that work. And I think that's important to keep everyone involved and connected. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with that group.
And I would just say the feedback that I've gotten from higher ed among those who've participated in letters has been pretty glowing. They've been quite pleased and satisfied, so I think we've got some symbiosis here that we can continue to nurture and perhaps lead to some the articulation of standards or requirements for the programs that will come from the programs. That's the best kind, but hopefully we can prepare a comprehensive representation of this work for the General Assembly, for the leaders to understand, so that we'll have a good solid foundation for offering further information and guidance if we have the opportunity. Mickey, did you want to add anything further?
I wanted you all to know that we also are reconstituting the members of the Committee for Mathematics Achievement. So that has representation from district leaders, schools across the state, as well as higher ed partners. So we will be moving forward, and I think they too will be able to guide any sort of numeracy agenda. And you know, the only pause or heart of concern that I have, especially in the elementary space, is that this next year is truly the first time when all of the new requirements must be in place for Read to Succeed, and it is not a light lift, as we know. And so I hope that people will think about the position of that elementary teacher, and certainly numeracy is critical and is important, and we want to do work in that space. But if we see another piece of legislation for mathematics that is the exact sort of format of Read to Succeed, I hope that there will be some scaling that's done so that people can do that successfully and reasonably as they move into the next few years as well. But I see it as a need, and I would love to have the opportunity to engage with legislators on what that can be and what we know from the field can be effective in terms of coaching and resources. There's a lot of potential to make effective change in that space.
Any further questions, Lou?
Mickey, where are we in the post-CCLD, the CCLD replacement RFP process?
So it is complete. It has not yet been posted, but we're in the queue.
Okay.
And so we're working with the Office of Finance and Operations to kick that off and to get started to bring in proposals and then move to select a vendor. So that contract must be in place, Vice Chair Young, by July 1 of 2024, and that is something that is approved by the board. So once we complete that RFP process, we will ensure that we're on the board agenda prior to having that contract finalized, so that you'll receive an update on who that selected partner is.
Just curious.
So essentially the RFP is not out yet. I mean,
It has been drafted, but yes, it's not public yet.
Okay, all right.
And I apologize, and to add an addendum to that, in the queue also is an RFP for a third-party evaluator of the literacy programs within our EPPs. So there will be, according to the statute, there will also be a third-party evaluator that will be part of evaluating the course programmatic parts of early literacy within the educator prep programs.
Yes, Dr.
Just
Todd.
2 quick questions. What's EPP?
Ed preparation programs.
Educator preparation programs, the acronyms and alphabet soup, sorry.
What's the meeting on August 24th?
August 24th, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm
Vice
sorry,
Chair
that
Young.
was a meeting that Sharon and I are having with the chair and
Okay.
vice chair of EPSB.
I got you, okay.
And CPE, I think, is at the table.
Yes.
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 That's right.
Right. And just not to labor it, we, like a lot of things, there are so many moving parts, but the board is, in December, we will report back on their decision to allow the -1 standard error of measure on the praxis exams, which creates a band instead of a finite cut score. And also, we are engaging with our preparation programs on the praxis performance assessment for teachers, which is more of a demonstrative assessment of skills, and so we are gaining some interest. We just had initial training for, naturally it is of the institution's choice to participate, but we have had a lot of interest, and we had an initial training with ETS over that. So we're getting ready to see, I believe, some movement in terms of offering a different assessment as well in terms of meeting licensure requirements. Then, as Brian mentioned to me, in November, we'll report back on our alternative routes to the legislators, just in terms of giving them an overview of how many are going through, what that looks like, what the landscape of now 9 options in terms of how that is playing out with candidates that are looking to enter the field. So just a couple of points to make on that as well.
Sorry to keep you in the hot seat, but the alternative assessment is the one they call PPAT, right?
Correct. It's
I
the
heard-
Praxis Performance Assessment for Teachers.
I heard there was a dust-up around the number of praxis tests that candidates have to take, that folks felt like maybe that changed to increase the cost on candidates?
It can somewhat, not distinctly, and naturally this is a very sensitive issue that we're very aware of. As of now, if an institution and a candidate chooses to complete the performance assessment, that is going to be accepted for their licensure requirements. Naturally, in December, at the December meeting, we'll reconvene and the board will make a decision. Likely we'll need more time because this is a longer process and we'll have very few candidates that probably will go through this. But certainly that would be a one-time fee, just like it would be to take any other praxis test. The grappling issue a little bit is around dual certification and how the performance assessment operates within an individual that is seeking dual certification. And so these are details that certainly we have to dig into and decide what is the best outcome on that. So some of the concern came around an individual would then have to take, say, for example, the content assessments. But for the initial, I'm very happy to say for the initial group of candidates that go through this, we have found a means to help support them financially so that they are not out any costs in terms of this initial piloting of the test. So we're cognizant and aware and trying to ameliorate that to the best of our ability, but then ultimately we just have to make those
So even if they could
final
take 2?
Potentially, and it would only be though in terms of content. So part of the performance assessment conversation is around, what would we expect an outcome to be as far as their content knowledge goes, and certainly there are a lot of varying opinions in terms of whether that needs to be a praxis-based test or whether or not the performance area represents a solid indication of their content knowledge, and then further extrapolating that out, would we have a multiple measures option, such as the GPA aspect of it? We've had conversations around that with our coursework. So we have options on the table to just, of course, be dependent upon what the final recommendation will be in terms of the candidates that are going through.
Last comment, and that just...
No, go ahead.
Just that I had a chance last week to actually go through the standards for the PPAT assessment and the artifacts that the candidates had to upload, and it was really quite good. The evidence was very authentic in an electronic digital portfolio that looked like the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that we want beginning level teachers to demonstrate as they enter into our classroom. So I like the work. I like the way it's trending. I like that we are thinking beyond the standardized normative nature of a praxis test to be the determiner of quality completion. So I think we're grappling with the right things.
Hopefully so. Thank you.
So, the issue here, though, we really are in a position to have a lot to say to the legislators and to others who kind of represent who are guardians of the public interest. And I would like for us to always be working in a collaborative way so that we can give them the full picture, the full answer. And not to hide where we have vulnerabilities and challenges that must be addressed, particularly our students' performance around numeracy and literacy, but to indicate where their further investment and further interest can be most productive and leverage the most on behalf of the outcomes that we want to achieve. So, I expect we'll be working together, but part of that is keeping each other informed. So looking forward to the 24th when we talk about how we structure that kind of collaboration between the entities of interest and responsibility for teacher education, those that bear responsibility for the kind of content monitoring and standards, and Brian, those responsible for helping us make our case and show that we are true partners in achieving the outcomes that are important for our kids. So we've got a busy season ahead of us. We'll be talking more. Please, go ahead.
It's worth noting as a priority that I think is shared across stakeholders, including a lot of folks in the legislature, in the General Assembly, and that's paid student teaching. So this is something that we've talked about a lot over the past year. I think there was some initial, I don't know that it made it through in 319, but I think it was initially in 319. So I think there's a lot of interest in how to make that happen. But it occurred to me as I was watching the ABRs get presented yesterday and talked about that I don't think it's included in any of our ABRs. And so I don't know where on the priority list it falls for everybody, or if it's a bit of a how do you eat the elephant issue and no one's really sure kind of where to start with it or how to make it happen. But I do think there's a lot of interest across the various stakeholders in making it happen. It's just a matter of how. So.
Just your opening statement. What were you just talking about?
Paid student teaching.
Paid?
Yep. So
paid student teaching.
And obviously a lot of these things are all kind of intertwined, but it's certainly part of that recruitment and retention issue. Along the same lines, Dr. Darnell's team just pushed out the exit survey that was required by 319, which will allow districts to give a survey to anyone that voluntarily leaves the district. There's kind of two different paths for classified and certified staff, but really the goal, I think, from the recruitment and retention standpoint is to survey those early career teachers that are leaving and to better understand why they're leaving so that hopefully we can address those issues down the road.
Other comments? Fasten your seatbelts. You're going to be really busy. Thank you so much to each of you. Today's board agenda included a time dedicated to public comment. This segment is a 10-minute comment period for a 3-minute comment period for those who sign up. We have no. We have one.
Not in person.
We have one person?
Not in person, one in the portal.
There's a public comment in the portal. I didn't get that. We would ask the board members to please reference that comment and read it, and it will be noted in the record. We now come to another really happy occasion, the presentation of the 2023 Grissom Award for Innovation in Special Education. Dr. Glass?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The late Dr. Johnny Grissom served at KDE in the role of Associate Commissioner for the Office of Special Instructional Services. She provided steadfast commitment, service, and leadership, striving to help all students achieve at high levels regardless of their disabilities. This award is given in the spring of each year to a Kentuckian or a Kentucky organization to honor outstanding dedication to improving student achievement for students with disabilities. Criteria for the award include leadership or implementation of innovative practice in curriculum, instruction, or assessment that leads to improved learning, post-secondary, or workforce outcomes for students with learning or behavioral differences, and districts or schools demonstrating significant improvement or sustained excellence in learning or behavior outcomes for students with learning or behavior differences. At this time, it is my honor to announce the winners of the 2023 Grissom Award for Innovation in Special Education. That is the Henderson Assistive Technology Team. I think you all are here, right in the front row. Thank
Yeah.
you. Let's please stand and be recognized. That team includes Kim Rush, Michelle Hillenbrand, Sherry Hogg Hazelwood, Sarah Ziegler, Julie Holland, Mary Jo Montgomery, April Perry, and Amber Van Meter. I'd like to take a few minutes to share what the nominator of this group had to say about the team's outstanding contributions to special education. The HAT, which is the acronym for Henderson Assistive Technology Team, is a multidisciplinary team whose members use their areas of expertise to identify the abilities and needs of students. HAT provides services in assistive technology for all special education students throughout our schools. In 2019, it was noted that several of our preschool and elementary students with complex needs did not have a way to communicate their basic wants and needs. Furthermore, 30% of students on alternative assessment leave school without a functional means of communication. There was a need for assistive technology to be more readily available in our district, and because of the dedication of our HAT team, we are making great strides toward providing a voice for every student. So thank you all very much, and would any of you like to say a few words?
We just thank you for this honor. We're PTs, speech therapists, OTs, and that's just our passion, is to help these kiddos. We work from preschool to high school, and we just thank you for honoring us for doing what we love to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And another round of applause for these.
You have photo ops.
Congratulations again to the Henderson Assistive Technology Team. On behalf of the Kentucky Board of Education and the staff at the Kentucky Department of Education, I want to personally thank you for your dedication to improving student achievement for all students. We do have an award here for you. It's a lovely award that I'll share with you. I'll turn things over to the chair now, and because this is the last thing on the agenda, we may want to let you adjourn the meeting, and then we can take photographs with this group right over here, if that works.
Chair Robinson?
Yes.
Could
Yes,
I just say one
please.
thing to the team?
Yeah.
Speaking as the chair of the awards committee, our committee did get to see your nomination, of course. And in making our determination, I remember the constant flow of conversation around it was how you have opened the world to so many children. So thank you for what you're doing. You are so appreciated.
I appreciate that comment. That is we're pleased to have you with us. We want to get a photo and have you join us for lunch, please. But is there any further business to come before the board? There is none. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
All right, Dr. Steve Trimble, is there a second? Ms. McQuarrie. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting so that we can enjoy some social time with our guests, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Please join us for a picture.